Good morning, Tony Dattino on Monday. We are now up to June the 12th, moving along, and my goodness, I don't know where the year is going, but I've been changing my times with my Live with Tony because I want to at least get them recorded when I know my schedule is going to take me away from the 4 to 5 o'clock hour so that I at least get it done so that I provide some of the information, especially on Mondays when I'm doing a lot of reading over the weekend, and I want to capture some of the highlights of that reading. So let's get right to work. And by the way, let me tell you one other thing I keep forgetting to tell you. For some reason, my Facebook Live seems to cut out at 10 minutes and 15 seconds. So when you see me kind of rushing at the end of some of my broadcasts, in the 9:30 mark, I start trying to hurry and lose track of the time, and I want to make sure I get done by 10:14 so that it doesn't freeze and lock me out and then doesn't let me file and record. Anyway, let's get to work. I'm reading a number of articles as it discusses as we get older, right? And I don't know what as we get older, we're all getting older every day of the week. And what they're talking about over and over again in the different articles I'm reading is as we get older, we're bound to lose our memory and we're bound to have lose certain functions and we won't be able to multitask and we may not be able to remember all of the things that we used to do when we were younger or there are all these different things that are going to happen to us. We may forget where we put our keys, or we may not remember appointments or things. And of course, if we're having appointments, I always say let's put them in a calendar. That's always an easy one. But our brains are going to lose some of its functionality. And the question I always send back to these editors, to these magazines, or to these newsletters that I get is, are you doing these control studies or are you doing these reports with people who have learned how to improve their memories? Because I talk about memory as a verb, and they write about it so often as a noun. And what do I mean by that? Well, so many of the people that have entered the USA Memory Championship came into it as a sign, as a lesson of hope from somebody that had dementia in their family or somebody that had Alzheimer's. And they come to the Memory Championship as a resort of hope. Like, is there something I can do to improve my memory? Are there things that I can do to take some level of control? And the screaming answer to that is yes, there are things you can do to help minimize or help to minimize your loss of memory. And the question I always ask people, and they stare at me with this blank face, is, when have you ever learned how to improve your memory? And people look at you like, oh, well, we saw something about that once before. Or, gee, I didn't think there was a skill that I could learn. And I always remember doing a keynote speak at a high school group at one point when I asked the students, when do we use our memory? And of course, the students looked at me like that was some kind of a trick question. And I said, it's not a trick question, it's a serious one. And one of the students, bravely enough, said, in everything we do, and all day long, in my studies and my school, and where I have to go, and when I'm going after school, and what my plays are on the sports team that I'm a part of, I use my memory all the time. And I say, this is great. Great answer. We use our memories all the time. And then I ask a question, when in our educational systems anywhere have we learned how our memories work and how we can improve it and how we can exercise it? When have we learned to do any of that? And a teacher from the back of the room says, we don't teach that. And so I continue to read research reports talking about memory, and I send back to editors on a frequent basis. Are you doing these studies and making these conclusions with people who have never learned how to improve their memories, have never exercised their brains the way we exercise our bodies? And what are we learning about our physical bodies? Exercising our muscles and aerobics and our flexibilities are all critical elements of maintaining a good, healthy heart. We're also learning it's good for a good, healthy brain, but let's leave that for another day. But we're learning that we need to continue to exercise our bodies to maintain as much of its fullness and its capabilities as possible. So we have balance exercises, we have yoga exercises, we have uh, running exercises, we have light weightlifting, and none of this needs to make you a world-class decathlon Olympian. The fact of the matter is we've learned over and over again through the years that there are physical things we can do that help us with our body's well-being, our heart's well-being, the organs in our system, of what we can do to improve it. But where is that like amount of learning when it relates to our mental fitness? And yes, we have growing numbers of people with dementia. We have growing numbers of organizations setting up for Alzheimer's. We have foundations and funds to do it after the fact. But what are we doing for prevention? What are we doing to build the muscle like in our brain? The most important thing to our function. When I talk to people of the biggest thing they worry most about losing their ability to mentally know what's going on around them. And yet, where are we teaching people how to exercise their brain? And I read these articles over the weekends. As you know, I do most of my reading over the weekends. I sit out at our pool. It's here in Windermere, Florida. I'm able to sit at the pool, do a little bit of swimming, then I do a lot of reading, and I get all revved up on Monday mornings to say, my goodness, how do we write this stuff and have people read this and then worry and angst over it when we should be saying, and here are some things that you should be doing that can exercise your brain. Now, we all know activity. I think the common denominator coming out of all of the science in terms of brain health is aerobic activity, walking, doing some light weights, doing some flexibility. We're learning at least now one message is getting out to help with brain health. But where are the mental challenges that we're putting into our brains that are really one of the strongest? Now, the exercising brings the oxygen into the brain, and we know oxygen, a good portion of the oxygen we breathe in relative to the size of the brain is used by the brain. But where are we bringing in mental exercises? Now we think, well, it's a Sudoku. Well, some people say, no, it's really not Sudoku. Well, it might be this game. Well, no, those teach you how to play games. And so I say over and over again, who's doing the studies that reflect the physiological changes that take place in the brain by using various mental mental skills? How do you remember people's names and faces? How do you remember reading pages of literature and information so it comprehends and stores? How do we create focus for people? How do we keep them in the mind of focus? How do we put all this together so people have a fighting chance to continue to learn throughout their whole life? And that it's not just, well, I'm at a school, I graduated, I even went to college, I even got a graduate degree, and now we stopped learning in the world of 2022, where information is coming at us fast and furious of what we learn. As you can tell, it gets me a bit frustrated. But the message I want to continue to get out to people is there is so much more we can do with our own mental capacities than we ever thought possible. There are skills and techniques that you can learn to improve and have fun with that, build the muscle like in your brain. And the USA Memory Championship website can help you at least start to do some of that. Gives you a level of hope. We're going to continue on this campaign, and we are going to continue to get people to realize, goodness, you can take control over some of the abilities that you have within your life that can make a difference in your long-term mental health. Give it a go. We'll see you back here on Wednesday.